upbeat, cheesy music fades in. Welcome to Radio Free Urbanism, the podcast where we pretend to know everything about cities, but really just like talking about bike lanes and overpriced coffee. Join us as we ramble on about sidewalks, skyscrapers, and whatever else pops into our heads while we try to sound smart. Whether you're a city planner, a frustrated commuter, or just someone who likes to hear people use the word infrastructure way too much, we've got something for you. Upbeat, cheesy music fades out. That was that intro was provided by ChatGPT.
I thought so.
I said, please write an intro into a podcast about urbanism called Radio Free Urbanism. And then it wrote one, and then I said, make it sound kind of stupid. So that's the results. Welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, folks. I am your host, Alex Williams, and I am joined by my two regular co-hosts, Nick Laporte.
Hello.
And Ethan Myers.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yeah, we're happy to be back. And Ethan, we're happy you're back because you went on a little adventure. Do you want to tell us about that?
That's right, everybody. Folks, I took a little adventure this past week to the wonderful place known as Salt Lake City. And I decided to go check out some of the transit there and just get out of town because, sometimes you just got to do that. And a pretty interesting city, I have to say. First note that I have to say about it is it's got the largest block sizes in the world for any city. So in terms of square blocks, it's bigger than quite literally any city in the world. So It takes about 5 minutes, basically, just for me, fast walking to get across one of those blocks. So if you ever visit Salt Lake City and someone says, "Oh yeah, I'm just around the block," be prepared for a little bit of a walk.
You know what? I will say though, the nice thing about square blocks is that a block is the same distance no matter what direction you're traveling.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of having the long, skinny ones,
Oh yeah, no, that's at least great too. And another real urbanist potential of Salt Lake City is actually turning these blocks and actually kind of subdividing them even further and turning those into actual car-free spaces. Mm-hmm. So the potential for pedestrianization for Salt Lake City is absolutely massive, just like their block sizes. But of course, I also had to stop and talk with some of our best urbanist advocates out of anywhere in the U.S., and those are the wonderful folks who we've mentioned before at the Rio Grande Project. Now, things have been going pretty solid there transit-wise in Salt Lake City, and with a bunch of money opening up in the city due to it hosting the 2034 Winter Olympic Games, there's more chances than ever to actually turn the city and turn this one neighborhood around Rio Grande Station and the station itself into an actual area that, is good for the people. They do have an event coming up. I believe it's September 12th. It's on their website. We'll link to it below in the show. And there's me with Fred and Christian from the Rio Grande Project that Alex is showing on his phone right there. It was quite a trip, I gotta say, and the people of Salt Lake are doing some real good work out there.
That sounds awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and it's got me pretty optimistic about it. Did you have a favorite thing you saw while you were in Salt Lake?
So I'm an absolute sucker for streetcars. It doesn't matter how useful or useless they are. And I went to go and check out Salt Lake's one single streetcar line called the S Line. And not only are they building a bunch of transit-oriented development around it, but it also has a really nice multi-purpose pathway right next to it for the entire right-of-way. So it actually gets some pretty decent ridership, and you also get bikes paralleling it. It's one of the prettiest little transit corridors I've seen out of any city in the U.S. And if you're into transit, go check out the S Line in Salt Lake. It's really something.
That's great. And we're happy to have you back. We will be doing a live show on the S Line sometime.
Is it actually S-shaped, or is it just named that?
It's just called the S Line. Its coloring on the map is gray, and it's called the S Line, and yet it doesn't turn at all. It's just straight.
Straight line. That's
okay. Hey, you know what? We love a little bit of local lore, weird stuff like that.
It's wonderful. Go check it out. It's just it's really it's the most streetcar of all time.
Sweet, we will. Nick, you had something to say.
This is a slight update from what I talked about, I think, the past 2 episodes, which was the cyclist who was killed in Toronto when there was an obstruction in the bike lane and she swerved into the street and got hit by a truck. So we talked about who's responsible. Can you sue the city? Who is responsible when things like that happen and nothing gets changed after that? And I did a little bit of research and found out that there's been several cases where cyclists have been killed and families have sued the city. I haven't found any that I've found the ending of those particular lawsuits. One in New York City happened, I think, in 2022, and the lawsuit was filed in 2023, where a woman in her mid-30s was killed in a similar situation where there was a stretch on, I think, 9th Avenue, New York City, that wasn't changed, even though 5 cyclists had died there in the past decade, and the family is suing for $100 million. So there was a case, I think, for who's responsible for that, who needs to fix that. But even more importantly, I think there's a book that I haven't read yet, but I was listening to Active Towns and he had Wes Marshall on, who is the author of Killed by a Traffic Engineer. And I think he goes into depth about that. So in their podcast, he talked a little bit about that. Who is responsible? And he really talked about how engineers, at least coming from their perspective, obviously there's a lot of different people in this whole process, the city, the police officers, traffic enforcement, everything around that. But coming from the perspective of an engineer, he talked about how engineers are incentivized to basically just do the minimum, to do no less than what's in the book and no more. So whether or not that book is right, whether or not what's in that book is safe, they can't really do much about it. They just have to follow what's in the book. And that's their job. So it puts them in a precarious situation where they could know that something that they're going to be building isn't the best as far as it comes to safety, but there's really not much that they can do about that. But I'm going to probably come back to this in a while. I'm going to go read this book and I'll come back because I think it's an interesting conversation and I'm very curious to see how this shapes up because I think this is going to become a big story in Toronto. Obviously, it is right now. As I talked about in the past podcast, it's still going on Reddit. The biking lawyer who's in Toronto keeps posting stuff about this where bike lanes are blocked in the city. And there needs to be more done about it. Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's an ongoing conversation about who is to blame. And I think also people needing to take it seriously. This week on Threads, I saw a few different bike lane related things. And while I was out for coffee with a friend the other day, we saw somebody parked in the bike lane. They parked in the bike lane too close to the intersection, right? Like it wasn't just that they were in the bike lane; they were also right at the intersection. My friend actually confronted them about this, and the guy made a silly face and kind of did a meh, like this is a grown man. And then got in his vehicle and drove away after 5 minutes sitting in the bike lane, the week after somebody died in Toronto because of a blocked bike lane. And I think we need to all take responsibility for improving the safety of our cities, but also like when we're building that infrastructure, right? Because we know these types of people exist. Everybody, when you're out driving, you know that there are irresponsible drivers on the road. You're the perfect driver. We know this. I'm not going to say that you're not. You're the perfect driver. We know. But you know that there are imperfect drivers on the road with you. And wouldn't it be better if we built our infrastructure in a way that made sure that when those imperfect drivers behaved imperfectly, again, not you, but other people, when they do that people don't die. One thing that I saw, I'm not going to pull it up on the screen here. I'm just going to show it. This is something I saw on Threads here, and it's somebody like it's an awful bike lane, right? It's a sad excuse for a bike lane, and I just think if you wouldn't let your 8-year-old child ride in that bike lane, if you wouldn't let them do it unsupervised, you did it wrong. That is not a bike lane. That does not qualify as proper infrastructure. That's kind of my 2 cents.
That's
a mile.
that's always
Yeah.
a good metric. I think it's the whole 8 to 80 AAA bike lanes. Is that just that? That's someone as young as 8-year-old up to 80 plus can go ride there and feel safe and be safe more than
Yep.
just feel safe. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. But like you said, ongoing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's ridiculous how often we fail to actually implement good change for our streets, and a lot of the times this incrementalism is a good thing that we usually do. We usually have been seeing some smaller upgrades, but realistically we have to take actual approaches to build proper infrastructure. And while sometimes, connecting and starting these changes are good things, we actually do need to go out there and actually build the proper cycling infrastructure that we see in other cities around the world.
Yeah, yeah, and we know it's there, and we know it can be done. So we've talked about trains, we've talked about city blocks, we've talked about bike lanes. Well, I want to talk about buses because I have some fantastic news for everybody. So
If it's got rubber on the tires, I don't want it.
So I take the bus. I use transit quite often, and there is one particular route that I use at the end of my Sunday evening shift that I have at my second job, that I hang on to because it has benefits, and that's nice. And so Sunday evenings I got to get home. At the end of the day, I don't sleep at work, believe it or not. So I gotta head home, and the Max Teal, one of Calgary's kind of BRT-ish lines, on weekends for some reason it ends at 8 p.m. Who knows why? That's it's part of your primary transit network, and for some reason we end it at 8 p.m. But the city updates bike routes or bus routes every quarter. So every 3 months, there's a fall update, there's a spring update, and we get a few little changes to a few of the routes, right? To try and optimize things based on what people have said, as well as just generally trying to provide better service, right? So if your route's not good right now, talk to transit, talk to other people on your route, and maybe get them to talk to transit as well. Because when you raise kind of a fuss about something, when you make something an issue, sometimes you might see results. And well, folks, we are seeing results. So as part of the fall updates to the Calgary Transit Service, the Max Teal, which is the nearest BRT route to me, is getting some improvements. And it says weekend service has been revised to every 20 minutes. Weekend evening service has been extended to midnight.
Nice.
So,
Squeaky
yes.
wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
I've been reminded of that recently.
Yeah, we got this 4-hour extension of hours of service plus higher frequency. So normally when I go home Sunday nights, it is an hour and 33 minutes is what Google Maps will kind of identify it as. There is a slightly shorter way that I can go, but it saves 10 minutes, and then I have to go downtown and then wait for a bus and then come back out. And that's not really the direction that I want to go. I'd rather wait at some buses further south, at some stations further south that I prefer, that have better lighting and that have heating in the winter. So I prefer those stops, that route, even though it takes another 5 minutes. So an hour and 34, 33, 35 minutes to get home Sunday nights, which is ridiculous. Okay, this is a 20-minute drive. Okay, but with this one change, my bus route is now 50 minutes to get home Sunday nights. That's saving me 45 minutes almost.
That's massive.
On
it's
Sunday nights.
Huge.
That's huge time savings. And the bus, the transfers that I have to take, they're all 4 minutes. So I literally hop off the bus, wait up to 4 minutes, hop on the next bus. So not a bad deal.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to see. I think even in Vancouver, there's been some updates with the buses. I think they're adding a bunch of service in the next month. I don't know if that just has to do with school starting up again, and they're using it as a PR option to be like, hey, look, service is expanding. And I don't know. I have to look more into it, but I thought it was like, isn't that just because school's starting soon? Yeah.
Could be part of it, for sure. Jen, in the chat, we do have a live chat going. We do these shows live on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, you actually get to be in the chat with the other patrons, including today, Austin, Skitch, and Jen. And Jen in the chat says, what are you going to do with all the time you've gotten back? Well, that is a great question. Maybe go to bed earlier. Because usually Sunday nights I get home and I go to sleep. But I'll probably keep doing that. I might just get a little bit extra sleep.
That's a good use of your time for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Ethan, our resident transit nerd, do you have any thoughts about like how these small improvements can improve people's commuting and general life? Because people don't just use transit for commuting either.
Yeah, no, transit's got a whole host of uses, and that's why a lot of agencies have started to shift away from that 9 to 5, transit being for the commuter kind of system, and more towards service that's a little off the peak hours, more weekend services, more nighttime services, and that's always a good way for our transit agencies to shift focus, because there's a whole host of transit ridership uses. But a lot of these moves usually are not so much moving forward, but more or less adjusting the system to its ridership base. So they might have had to cut service somewhere else in the city in order to adjust for this service change to happen. Now, I'm not saying that always happens. Sometimes agencies can scrounge up a few dollars out of the couch or something like that and be able to, do some more extra service during the nighttime. But most of the time, these service adjustments are usually shifts towards, improving service within their network, because for most agencies, you get a choice. You can either have really good network coverage, or you can have really good frequency with a lacking network coverage. And if you have good network coverage, you'll most likely have worse frequency on your lines. But regardless of that, just improving overall service to the riders is always a massive benefit. And hey, if it improves your commute or, just your daily trips that you like to use on your local routes, that's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And Skitch gives a really insightful comment here in the live chat. It's amazing that it all worked out like that. I work in transit and had to respond to a customer complaint about buses not lining up well on a weekend evening. It was surprisingly complicated to figure out how to rearrange the bus schedules and assignments to better serve this one customer. And I think this is a great illustration that these transit agencies are looking to help you. If you tell them, hey, these are my needs, these are the places where I need to go and how I get there, and here's this one issue that I have that's kind of like ruining my life right now. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, as Nick said. I think that's a fantastic insight from Skitch there. And yeah, it is challenging to figure out how to rearrange the bus schedules. And that's why a well-funded transit service is so important. So that a lot of the time, like right now, the reason that this is improving my transit schedule so much is because this bus service didn't exist in the evening yet, right? So one, there's a bus that wasn't serving that time frame that is there now, right? So that's one big change. But also that 20-minute frequency. It's not the perfect frequency, but at least if I got to the bus stop halfway between when the last one left and the next one is coming, that's still only a 10-minute wait, which is better than the one that I currently have to do, which is 25-minute wait. And so a higher frequency of service can solve a lot of those weird little mix-up things, right? Like, oh, I just barely missed the bus. Well, that's not a big deal because it's a 5-minute frequency, right? So I think there's a lot of ways to kind of optimize, if you optimize with frequency, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. Like that's one of the biggest complaints I've always had with using bus services is just the lack of frequency. Like you miss that one bus and you're like, I had to wait for half an hour for the next one. Like,
Yeah, and that's why a lot of agencies have they've kind of shifted their buses, or they're in the middle of shifting their buses away from having a wider network coverage with, hourly or, even worse frequencies, and more or less to having slightly more frequent bus service on less routes. So rather than having 20 routes with hourly frequencies, they're going to cut that down to, let's just say, like 10 routes, half-hour frequencies, and that's going to be much more useful for riders and stuff like that. That's just an example. That's not like the full of what every agency does, because there are, that's like a very extreme example, simplification, but it is like that's what agencies are doing now, and they're mostly able to do that because of improved micro-mobility and micro-transit funding for these agencies, like Dial-A-Ride and other, transit-on-demand services.
Yeah. Jen says lower frequency is only tolerable if there are some cool things near the stop to check out and distract me while waiting. Sadly, cool stuff can't be by all bus stops. And I think that's a great point too. I think that's a great argument for transit-oriented development, to have things make the station the destination. But at the same time, let's get that frequency up, get those hours of operation up, and hopefully build a more robust transportation network that's accessible to all of our citizens. Nick, you had another thing to say?
Yeah, I got a little mini update and something I wanted to share. And I mentioned to you guys, I think a week ago, that I gotten back into a hobby that I used to be into, which is playing paintball. It's something I used to really enjoy, and I got back into it recently. But the problem with paintball often is that the fields typically have to be away from anything else, because there's a lot of flying projectiles around, and nobody wants that near their house. Completely understandable. The problem with that is getting to the field is that most people drive, right? So last weekend I was like, you know what? I don't like driving. I don't want to drive. I have to drive almost an hour each way. So I was like, I could probably figure out how to get there with transit and my electric scooter. So what I did was I figured out a way that I could just get on my scooter, put all my stuff in a big backpack, go to the SkyTrain station, take it all the way to Surrey, and then scoot the last few kilometers to the field. And it worked out. It worked out, which is crazy because I didn't think you could do that, but you can. And it's amazing that there's so many things we think we need cars for that you don't actually need it for. And I feel like there's so many trips that people make that they do in a car that are completely superfluous. There's so many ways to get around. And I don't know. The proof is there. I see it every day. Anytime I see it, like I was at the grocery store yesterday and somebody had parked their bike there and they had a makeshift trailer on the back with a ton of plywood on the back. Just like, this guy's getting around. I took a picture of it. It's awesome. Anyway, my point of the story is take a look. See if there's other ways you can get around the city. If you're typically driving to some places, take a gander. Because I actually enjoyed the ride. It took about the same amount of time as driving, which is amazing. And save the planet just a little bit.
Yeah. So actually, I drove to work the other day. I have a confession. For the first time in over a year, I drove to work. And it was faster for sure. But I did miss the sitting on the bus thing, and I drove to work because my brother's away right now, and I had to pick up some stuff, so I snagged his car. But it was interesting because I didn't feel when I did it, I didn't feel like, oh man, I've missed this, or oh man, this was so much better. Even though, like 100%, it saved me time. Right, like that Monday morning trip was, was much shorter that day. What was funny though was as I was driving, instead of like normally when I'm on the bus, I see the bus lane, and I'm like, oh, like that's where we're going. And so when I was driving, I saw the bus lane, and I was like, oh, that's where we're going. Until I like corrected myself. I was like, wait. That's where I go when I'm on the bus, but I'm in control today. I'm driving, so we go this way. So it was kind of a funny little.
I've done that though, like
really?
Similar to that, where I'll be a pedestrian and I'll walk into the bike lane. And we're like, wait a minute,
we can't do this.
I'm not on a bike.
Yeah.
So I like what you're saying, though, about there being these other ways to get around the city. Sunday night, I was riding a bus with this lady who every now and then I see on the bus. And she was telling me that the reason she takes the bus is because her car got crashed into, and she didn't have the money to repair the car or get a new car. And this happens a lot, right? Like in my video where I talk about going car free, I talked about the finances. I talked about the cost of car ownership. It is very expensive to own a car. And if you have the sort of sudden and unexpected high cost that this lady experienced, where all of a sudden she needs to replace the whole thing, right? Suddenly that's gone and out the window. So I chatted with her for a little bit about that, and for her it was purely a cost savings thing. And I think a lot of people are doing that, and that's a big reason why we need to improve our transit services, is because the cost of living is so expensive right now. And if we're able to take that like burden away, like help bear that burden a little bit. And here's the thing. Cars cost the taxpayer more money than transit does. That's the bottom line of it.
Yep.
And right now, both individual households and governments are looking for cost savings. And within cities, one of the things that we can do is to have robust transit service. That's one of the options. And of course, as more people ride transit gets better. So I think that's some really really important stuff that I wanted to add
the
to
induced demand of transit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other? Are we done? Are we
I
done
think
with updates?
we're almost half an hour in. We should go to the story.
We
first
should
story.
get to the stories. Take us
Look
away.
at us
Ethan.
yapping about ourselves. Well, you know what? It's time to yap about our wonderful stories. So let's get right into it. So our first story today comes to us from, surprisingly, Chicago. But it's actually because there's been a lot going on there. The Democratic National Convention is currently ongoing in Chicago. I believe it's the last day, and what that means is that a lot of people are coming into the city of Chicago. Now, when cities host big events like this on a national stage, it usually means they have to step up everything within their cities. And Chicago is no exception here. So, as of recently, for this convention, they opened up a new station that we talked about, Damon. We talked about this one before on the show. But they've also improved service on both their red and green lines, which both go right by the United Center where the convention is being held, as well as running Metro service hourly from O'Hare Airport, which is the city's big airport, to downtown, which is something that the city has not done before. At most, they've done commuter service between that. So these are all absolutely exceptional things that they're doing. They're running extra service on 2 of their lines. They're making sure every train is clean, and they're making sure that Metro runs express service from the airport to downtown, which is just something that is, it should be the norm for any city like this, but it's good that they decided to at least step up the transit for this event. Now, here's my question to you guys. Do you think that there's any chance in hell that this keeps on going?
Not immediately.
No.
I think this might be a good showcase of how good we can have it. But it might take a hot second before it's like, oh, wait. You mean we can have it that good always? So I think we might get there, but might take a hot second.
Yeah, it's something that it's so frustrating to see when cities have the potential to do this long term. It's just they aren't doing it long term. And that honestly is probably some of the most frustrating stuff when it comes to transit within our cities, because we do see examples of cities that have had struggles with their transit networks. And then for special events that come up, they have the ability to improve, at least temporarily, before going back to the same mediocrity. Because this is the same system where we would have 28-minute, 30-plus minute delays on heavy rail rapid transit lines. We are talking about half-hourly spacings on these. Ghost trains galore and only commuter rail service during the rush hour. So it's quite the improvement, at least for the next week, but it's so disappointing to see that cities really cannot take the initiative to keep this on going. I'm hoping that, this is the surprise and that this is actually going to be the new normal for, service in Chicago, but it's unlikely.
Could you
Not
imagine
to be a pessimist.
if, what if they really did have this moment where they're like, oh my goodness, like we could do so good, and then they do really well for the DNC, and then after that they're like, and then we kept doing it, and that's the day everything changed here in Chicago. What if they did? What if it did change?
I think we'd be a lot happier with our analysis of the. I'd love to eat shit on this and say that Chicago. I'd love them to prove me wrong. I'd love nothing more for the CTA, Metra, and RTA to prove me wrong and actually say, hey, you know what? We're gonna keep this up. We're gonna keep doing this.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's just not the realistic approach when it comes to these kinds of just showcases that cities want to do and make themselves look better than they actually are on a national stage. And I mean, of course you have to do that to save face if you're the mayor or if you're the head of a transit agency, but it's just knowing that we could have that more often. It's right there.
Yeah.
Not even any major infrastructure upgrades. It's just right there.
Yeah. Nick, do you want to read this comment out from Jen?
Yeah. Jen says, I do feel like these post-lockdown massive events, concerts, Olympics, etc., are pushing cities to rethink their transportation designs if they want to attract tourists in big events.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we are starting to realize that. The good news is, I don't know about all of the cities. I know Calgary, our transit is up post-pandemic. Like we've kind of reached back up. Mm-hmm. And we've made that recovery, which is exciting, and it's growing and demand is growing. So I think there's some real opportunities to kind of keep that rolling on those steel wheels that we love oh so much.
Those steel wheels, we can't deal with any of those rubber wheeled vehicles.
Yeah,
buses, ew.
Or Montreal's metro. Ew.
That acceleration, so gross.
So gross.
Gross.
Is it okay? Somebody please explain to me why Montreal and Paris both have rubber-wheeled metros.
Michelin wanted to make money.
Is that?
I'm
is
not
that what
joking. Michelin actually basically full-on lobbied the French government to be like, make the metros rubber-tired.
Interesting.
Because Michelin is a French company, so.
Okay.
And then Montreal, wanted
to be French.
Yes.
Okay, so wait. Yeah, okay. So Michelin is the second largest tire manufacturer in the world, I guess. So I mean, good for them. Good for them. But that's literally what it is.
Yes.
Because I thought there was supposed to be like some
like a functional
because they
like
still
it's
have
better
steel
because...
they still have steel guide wheels on the trains.
Right.
At best, the main advantage of them is hill climbing because you have that extra friction. But other than that, I mean, your subway can have a flat tire.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I thought they were solid. Are they not solid? Oh my!
They're not.
They're interesting. And okay, am I right or wrong about this? That means that they cannot go outside. Like they can't have. So like the London Underground.
Yeah.
Isn't only underground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Whereas like Montreal's metro is 100% underground.
Yeah.
And the REM is above ground but uses steel wheels.
So
is that?
I
like
think,
part of it?
No, because I believe Paris has some above ground lines. I think that's just Montreal being incredibly weird with their construction. I know that there's some sort of quirk that has to go with it. I can't remember the exact reason why, but it literally is just STM having a moment.
Interesting. We've got to share. Nick, do you want to share this comment?
Sean in the live chat says, in Rome, they have Pirelli Metro.
Which is also a tire manufacturer. We were joking about naming rights in another Discord server that I'm in because, of course, we have Scotia Place coming to Calgary, and we all are going to call it Fireplace. And then the Arts Commons is being renamed the Workland Center after a wealthy family who donated tons of money to have their name slapped on there. Same thing, the Glenbow Museum is going to be the Glenbow Museum at the J.R. Shaw building for something, which Shaw is another very wealthy family in Canada. And yeah, like all of these naming rights things are kind of interesting. And honestly, if a tire manufacturer came to me and they said, Alex, we know you are 100% in charge of Calgary. Can you take these $100 billion and we will build and maintain this awesome metro for you. You just have to name it after us. I'd be like, yeah. You're going to build us our public transportation? That's huge cost savings. Sure.
Of course.
Why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, why not?
Although I feel like there'd have to be a catch. So maybe I'd just say no. But if they're just going to build it for me and it's free for the public to use,
they're going to make it terrible. That's their plan.
Yeah.
So that everybody wants to drive instead.
Do you know what? That is a real fear. If they did, if it turned out to be a disaster. Okay, maybe, you know what? I'm going back. I'm going to say no. If I was in charge of Rome, we would not have a Pirelli Metro.
It is decided.
Rome's Metro does have a really cool thing where it kind of like does like a giant loop to get over an incline because it's a steel metro, so it has to like in the line it actually has a loop where it kind of goes like inclining between stations, and I'm pretty sure that loop is right around the Coliseum as well too. And they had to do some very incredibly interesting construction. It's really cool to look up. I'll have to find some stuff about it, but
they have some extra engineering challenges there with the history in the ground, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh shit, we found some ancient ruins underground. Like this is going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true. We should be able to do things so much cheaper here, man. You talking about this loop that they have in Rome gets me thinking maybe we could do like a loop the loop.
Yeah.
On,
I was
on
thinking,
one
like
of our
a roller
metros.
coaster.
Like like what if the Montreal Metro? What if the Montreal Metro came out of the ground, it shot out of the ground, but in a tube, okay? And it went around because it like comes out. Maybe it goes out of the river, right? Like it comes out of the river in a tube, and then it goes around, and then it comes back down. So it doesn't actually go outside, but it does go upside down.
That sounds cool.
I don't know. Honestly, make Metro amusement parks again.
God! Imagine the disasters.
Is what I say. Yeah.
Roller coaster tycoon level.
Yeah. Just assign some roller coaster tycoon kid to make our transportation networks. Hey, it could work. Hot Wheels on roads. What if when you got onto the highway, you went through one of those, like it's like a spinner, right? The rubber spinners that you got on Hot Wheels, and you just like shot onto the road, instant acceleration. I don't know. Ramps take up a lot of space. We could save a lot see this.
You know what? They could
This
just
is
chop
true.
up the spaghetti bowl in Houston, and they could really do this. Like they're already primed for it. That level spaghetti bowl, the thing they have there, the interchange. Yeah, they're ready for it.
I think
That's true.
Man, we solved everything. Amusement parks solve everything. Nick's got our next story. Let's hop on to the next story.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
this one's coming out of the United States and California / Washington. So newly appointed Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol won't need to relocate to Seattle. Instead, he'll live in Newport Beach, California, commuting to Starbucks headquarters via corporate jet. So Starbucks will be providing Niccol with a remote office in Newport Beach, but he's expected to work from Seattle at least 3 days a week. So this arrangement highlights the flexibility top executives can demand corporations over average employees. This is already on top of him making millions of dollars, obviously, right? So as remote work becomes more common for CEOs, companies are increasingly more flexible and open to arrangements. So this is crazy. This is wild. So super-commuting is already a thing. We know people driving crazy distances. And this is that, okay? 1,000 miles each way to go from Newport, that's like Southern California, to Seattle. And that's going to be a flight that's about probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours each way.
Two and a half.
Yeah. So this is wild. And I did a little bit of napkin math here. Do you know how much CO2 this is going to burn? This is each way. And I did the fours on purpose. 4 tons of CO2 each way. That's 8 tons for 3 days a week that this is going to burn just to get this guy's fucking ass to his office job. So I did a little other calculations. For the average person to do a commute in their car, 4 kilograms. 4 kilograms for an average commute. And for on a bicycle, 400 grams, a tenth of that. So we're looking like, what is that? I don't even know. Can you guys do the math for me? Is that a thousandth? Like I could bike to work over 1,000 times and still produce less CO2 than this guy does in one direction.
Wait, you said 400 grams?
400 grams.
I think, and then he's doing...
Is that... Those are imperial tons?
Wait,
how much? It might be imperial
it's
tons.
Probably imperial tons.
Yeah. So
well, either way,
it's a lot.
It's a big difference.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Jen says just get him one of those iPads sitting on a Segway, if he wants to roam around the office and micromanage people. Yeah. It is weird. Like 3 days a week, he has to go into the office, and he's gonna fly all the way up there. That's crazy.
Just stay there for like 3 days.
Yeah. That's insane. That's insane. Although I admit I actually know people who super commute, but that's because they're in an industry that requires them to travel to several different places. It's not one location that they got to be at. But yeah, this is like he has his regular office in Seattle. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And this makes me think: should we open up a new subreddit, just fuck planes? Because I know there's fuck cigs. Fuck cigs is a one for cigarettes. Fuck planes. Obviously, we need planes. They're very useful. I use planes too.
I love flying.
Flying's fun. The carbon footprint is a problem. But trains can dole out a lot of solutions for a lot of these mid-distance places. Obviously, we know that for sure.
Now, but granted, the thing is that this is private flying, which is infinitely worse than commercial flying when it comes to CO2 output. And doing a 2.5 hour flight 3 days a week just for the day is just mental insanity when it comes to straight up allowing these emissions. And maybe it says something about the private airline industry that maybe we should probably limit stuff like this, or maybe put some sort of financial incentive to not do this type of flight every 3 days out of the week.
I also think it's wild. Like, I don't know. That's so much, especially like it's a company thing. Like that's expensive. That costs the company a lot of money. I just like that. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a fiscally responsible thing to me.
No.
It's
that's their own situation. I think just the abomination to me is just the fact that you're going to burn that much fuel.
Oh,
every
also,
single week.
let's mention the fact that this guy is the former Chipotle CEO. And
wait, this is him?
Yep, this is the former CEO of Chipotle. And for anybody who doesn't know, I'll see if I can find the video of this guy. But he is known for being the guy who kind of ruined the brand Chipotle and kind of shrunk the portions down and made everything a lot more expensive at the stores. And also for being the only guy to seem like he has never eaten at his own restaurant.
Yeah, that's a pretty funny video.
Here, I'll see if I can find it. It's. I think the viewers have to see it.
That's some out of touch stuff right there. Like, this is a rich person who doesn't know how much bananas cost, but like not even knowing
I mean, it's
food
just
is at
one
the company
banana,
you're CEO
Michael.
of.
How much could it possibly cost?
Yeah.
$10?
Great show.
So I also want to say the drive. If you were to drive from Newport Beach, California, to Seattle,
Oh, God.
Washington,
That's a long ride.
so it's like almost 20-hour drive. That's a further drive than going Madrid to Frankfurt.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is like this is a long distance.
It's massive.
Oh, no,
go.
this is not close at all.
Like I don't even understand. Just I don't know. If you took the job, just move, man. Just move. Like you have to go there anyways.
But I want to be in my California, in my nice weather, where the winters only get to 15 degrees Celsius.
Look, he lives in a rich Orange County neighborhood. Just get an apartment in Seattle, and then when you don't have to work, just fly down to your beach house.
Yeah, it's
Like,
crazy.
just do that. Dude, like,
I don't know.
I don't know.
We could be consultants for rich people. I think.
Demand more money.
Just demand more money. Yeah. I don't know. They live on a different planet. He lives on a different planet. Did you find the video, Ethan?
I couldn't find it separate from news
Too
coverage.
bad. Well, it'll have to be a mystery for those listening. Unless
You can
already-
find it. Just look up Chipotle CEO.
Yeah.
He's the one. He's kind of got this like fat neck, like very oily thing going on as well too. Like his face looks like it's covered in like straight olive oil. I can't explain it.
Let's. I'm sure he's a nice fellow. Maybe.
I'm not sure he's a nice fellow. I'm
Maybe
gonna
he's
I'm gonna full hate to him.
I just don't. I'm just not going to openly insult him.
I will.
as much.
I will.
Okay.
That guy doubled the price of my Chipotle bowl. He can catch all the flack from me.
I've never had Chipotle. Have you had Chipotle, Nick?
I've never eaten
Really?
Chipotle. No.
Is it good?
It's all right. I mean, it's
It's just
definitely gotten
expensive
downhill. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it went from being like $8 burrito bowls to like 15 in about a span
Yeah.
of 5 years. So
I'm a burrito boys guy.
I like Barburrito.
I've never had bar burrito. Mucho burrito's okay.
Yeah. I also, Costa Vida is fine. Yeah.
I forget we live in a
but-
world of very different chains.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we do have different food options. Okay, well, do we want to move on to the next story?
Take it away, Alex.
All right. So this story I titled "E-bikes don't just blow up," because we talk a lot about it comes up often that there are some issues with bike fires, e-bike fires.
It's a problem. It is a
right?
problem.
Yeah,
It is an issue.
It is a problem, and I think it's also important to remember, like we regularly say on this show, get an e-bike with a quality battery. Don't cheap out on your battery. It's not worth it. But this is kind of interesting. So there's a specialist insurer, and I didn't dig too deep into this, but I'll have the link in the show notes for us. But this is an interesting bit about this, because they found that e-bikes are no more likely to catch fire than cars, and we're not talking about electric cars, e-cars. Is that what do we call it?
EVs.
EVs.
Yeah. So this paragraph, I'll just read it out here. From Cycling Electric says, what the insurer found when comparing data on the ratios of fires of both the light electric mobility industry plus the ICE and electric car industry was that the incident rates were incredibly low. Of the 500,000 e-scooters and electric bikes on the market, just 0.011% caught fire, while EV FireSafe's 2010 to 2020 data had 0.0012% of EV cars of risk and 0.1% of internal combustion engine cars catching fire, a point perhaps encapsulated best by the assumption that it must have been an electric car fire that caused caused incident at Luton Airport last year, when in fact it was a diesel car fire.
That's wild.
So yeah, like we have this this bias because e-bikes, e-scooters, EVs, they're still kind of a new thing to the road, right? And so when something goes wrong with them, we're a little bit more hyper aware. But what they've found is actually they are less likely to cause fires than just your regular combustion engine that you, chances are, might just have parked in your garage that's attached to your home right now. And I'm not saying you should be worried about your ICE car catching fire. I'm just saying you shouldn't be worried about an e-bike or e-scooter catching fire. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is incredible data to see because, like you said, it's something that's increasingly becoming a thing in the news, and we've talked about it on the show, especially in New York City. I think the key difference is, so we're having, it's 1/10 of the fires are being started up with e-scooters and electric bikes, right, over internal combustion engines. But I think a key difference here, to be the bearer of bad news, is that a lot of the times these things are kept in your home, closer to where you sleep. And that makes a big difference. And like you said, we need to buy good batteries. I'm wondering how many of these are from just crappy batteries. Because when you talk about EV cars, where are they from? They're built in North America the vast majority of the time. If they're being driven here, they're going to be quality batteries, right? If they get damaged, they can catch fire. They can suffer from thermal runaway. That is a problem. But it's just so much easier to say, hey, I'm going to save, a few $100 and buy this scooter or this e-bike. Right. And that happens all the time. But we did see the news. Did we talk about on the show about New York having that battery swap? We did, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. New York having this battery swap program.
But...
Yeah. So that they can help prevent these from happening and not having to have batteries in the house. But just a quick solution. If you have a bike with a swappable battery, you can get these cases that you can put the battery in, even when you charge it. Just have that there near where you put your bike. Or if you just want to bring your battery in the house where it can be inside the case, sealed in there. And if it, the very rare chance that it, the thermal runaway happens, it's at least safe in there. So that's not going to burn down your house.
Yeah. Jen says, my concern is that these news stories will cause electric car owners to park on the street rather than in their driveway or garage, which is an interesting thing. I don't know if I'd be that worried about it. I think most people who purchase these things have some understanding that it's not just going to light on fire one day, and that it's not like magically worse than any other car at catching on fire. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would assume. I don't think we'll see this as like a widespread issue.
It's it's almost always a result of a crash, some collision, some damage happens to the battery, and that's when it catches on fire. Guess what? Where that also causes a problem: internal combustion engines. When they get in a car, in a crash, gas spills somewhere. There's a spark. Boom.
People really forget how dangerous gasoline is. I mean, it is incredibly flammable.
It's literally explosive, and that's literally how it's supposed to work.
And it's pressurized in your vehicle too, in the gas tank.
Yeah.
So, I just thought this was kind of an interesting little story that we should bring up. That's some interesting data because so often when we talk about these things, we're just talking about how we feel and what we hear in the news. Whereas how often on the news do you hear about, just a crash, just a car crash? You don't, but it happens every day. But it's because it happens every day that you don't hear about it.
They mention it. They say it in the traffic report. They'll say,
it's in the traffic.
Oh, there's a minor accident,
Yeah.
Causing congestion.
Yeah.
They'll kind of brush it over. But yeah, kind of a short one from me on that. Do we want to do listener mail?
Yeah, we got one in here.
We do.
We only got one. Might as well take it.
All right. Who's Ethan? It's you.
Let's do it. All right. So this piece of listener mail comes from our listener, Jen Hall, who is in the live chat. And she asks, do you have any recommendations for fiction-based movies that do a nice job featuring a less car-centric city or town? Alex,
love this.
I think you'd be a great start for this one.
Okay, well, the first thing when I read this, Skitch also says Jen is the MVP of listener mail. It's true. It's true. The first thought I had when I read this was actually the little town in the Truman Show.
Aha.
And they do have cars. They do have cars in the Truman Show, but it's just like there's that. Obviously, if you know the movie, like it's weirdly constructed and manufactured, but just like the stepping outside your front door and seeing your neighbor, right? Like those are things that come to mind when I think of that sort of thing. So that's one that I thought of. But then I've also been rewatching The Legend of Korra lately, which I learned today that Nick and Ethan aren't into. So, my mistake for even bringing it up. But in the animation, they do actually have some rail tracks laid down for trams and trolleys and the like. You don't see them, though. So I guess they just decided not to animate those. But they do have them in Republic City. So, that's one.
Well, I would love to go and talk about the first thing that came to my mind was The Hunger Games. Those are books, of course, but the movies, have there's not really cars, are there? I don't even know. I know they have they use trains a lot in the movies, in the book.
They have like some flying machines too.
Yeah. But
trains and flying machines.
The thing that I really wanted to say, and I'm sorry this isn't a movie, but it's a video game, at least from my perspective, and that's Pokemon. In the Kanto region, is the fact that you literally walk everywhere. You walk from city to city. And when you go to the cities, there's no cars. You can use a bicycle. I think the only motorized transport would be boats, and there's motorcycle guys, but that's it. There's no cars anywhere. Pokemon.
That's a good point. Yeah,
that is a good
like
point.
That one. Yeah. Ethan.
Yeah, so my example is from a TV show, a slightly popular one. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but SpongeBob SquarePants, Bikini Bottom, despite the fact that boats basically fill the role as cars, SpongeBob commutes to work by walking, Squidward commutes to work by biking, Mr. Krabs also commutes to work by walking, and people have boats, but they're not always used, so it's quite the multimodal city, and you'll often see SpongeBob and Patrick riding on the bus too. It's weird to think that it is in fact a very very multimodal city to get around in.
That's awesome.
I like that. Now comes the part where I admit that I've maybe seen one episode of SpongeBob.
Really?
In my whole life. My mom wouldn't let us watch it. She said we'd lose brain cells.
Oh my God, SpongeBob's amazing.
So.
I loved SpongeBob when I was a kid.
Maybe someday I'll watch it and see.
You could just watch the first 3 seasons in the movie and then just be done with it. Honestly,
and then just cut it there. Fair enough. I'm curious if anybody in the chat has some. We've got 4 people in the live chat right now.
Or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment.
Yeah, and if you're on YouTube, leave a comment and we'll see those, because it's kind of interesting. The Hunger Games came to my mind as well because they've got those nice trains. But I'll have to be on the lookout for some other stuff. I tried thinking maybe Star Wars, but Star Wars has a lot of cars in it.
Even if they're floating.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if you go when they go to Mos Eisley, and most people are walking around there. It's not like everybody's in a car, right?
Yeah.
Most people are walking around. And then on Coruscant, you get a lot of people using cars on the upper levels, but they've got massive trains on the lower levels, which you really only see once you start watching the Clone Wars. Austin in the chat says, I love Hey Arnold because it's a weirdly urban kid cartoon. First episode ever, they ride the bus in fruit costumes. Sean says, Hocus Pocus, the original one. Kid bikes to school, and they walk all over Salem.
That's right.
These are good responsive. Bob's Burgers. Says Skitch. There's
quite a few.
There's a few out there. I'm gonna try and make a list maybe of some good car light or maybe a little bit more walkable fictional environments.
I would like actually what first came to mind was Ted Lasso, because Ted lives in a very walkable, but it's a real place. It was in Richmond, in the suburbs of London, but it's a real place, so it doesn't count.
I did notice that too, though. Watching Ted Lasso, I did notice that. Is that like they go to the pub and then they just walk?
Yeah,
he just walks back to his apartment.
Yeah.
And then in the third season, is it the third season or the second season, when that lady comes in and she's got a folding bike?
The psychologist.
Yeah. So there are some good ones out there, and I think broadly there's some pretty big support. People like walking around their neighborhoods. They like feeling at home in their communities, and they like making their communities feel even more at home. But yeah, I think, are we about ready to wrap it up? Do we have anything else? I'll add quick. Jen says Sex Education, it's a series on Netflix. The students ride bikes, and it's not focused on just a matter of fact. And Austin says even South Park is very car light. Oh, and Suits, they have cars and they use cars, but the main character, Mike Ross, he rides his bike everywhere. So, there's a few good ones there, and they use the trains too. So, I'd say we're about ready to wrap it up.
Absolutely.
Anything to add, or are we just gonna let Ethan?
One quick
plug
last
his
thing here.
stuff?
I just want to say thank you to the Rio Grande people again. They sent me some stickers, some wonderful postcards and brochures. So very wonderful to receive that. So we'll shout them out again.
Nice.
Wonderful people working on great transit projects. But folks, if you want to find me, you can find me at Climate in Transit on basically any platform that's out there. Alex, where can the listeners find you?
You're really throwing us off here. The listeners can find me at Humane Cities on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to follow me on Threads, actually, you can.
It's popping off.
Look at this guy on Threads.
You can follow me on Threads at Alex Williams YYC. I don't really use the Humane Cities account. It's on there, but I just use my personal account for commentary and thoughts. Nick, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at Nick the Door. And with that, I think, Ethan, you can take it away.
Folks, thank you so much for watching this episode. As always, thank you again. I'm going to keep saying thank you. And also, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
And feet first.